First, though, Patrick English, Director of Political Analysis at YouGov. I was thinking about you guys, Patrick, the other day about how you've probably never been busier in YouGov HQ, given the way that the entire political landscape has changed in the last year or so.
No, you're absolutely right. It feels like we've not really stopped. I joined the company in 2021 and it's been full throttle ever since, really. It's remarkable, really, what's happening in British politics. And each day it brings something new. And as you sort of correctly identified there, Reform UK is something relatively new to the British political system, although former iterations you can trace back to at least sort of 2010.
Yep.
Plaid Cymru, though, the winners of this seat, have been around for quite some time, and I think they will be absolutely delighted with this result. And it goes to show, really, the Welsh polling that we were putting out and other companies were putting out before this by-election suggested that Wales is heading in 2026 for a fight between Plaid and Reform. And if these results can be interpreted in sort of that light, I would say the polling seems to be spot on in that regard.
Yeah, and of course it's a stark reminder for those political parties that the next big elections, May 2026, are just 27 weeks away. I mean, this is ultimately just around the corner, politically speaking.
It certainly is, and it's a really important and timely reminder, as you say, that the Labour and the Conservatives are really facing potential wipeout in Wales, which is a sentence that you never thought you'd find yourself saying, even as recently as sort of 3-4 years ago. The political landscape changes, it seems, every week. Every year brings a new dynamic to it. And all these little contests, these by-elections, I was just reading across some of the council by-elections, which have also been declared and reported this morning. And the story is similar across the board. Liberal Democrats taking seats off the Conservatives only just holding a council seat off against Reform in Lincolnshire. Up and around the country, what we see is this fragmentation of politics, this fragmentation of voters away from the sort of traditional main parties and splitting out into other parties, be that Greens, be that Reform, be that Plaid Cymru in Wales. It's happening everywhere, and it's difficult sometimes to keep up with.
Yeah, 100%. We were saying to our previous guest, Patrick, that politics is full of these sort of moments that take us by surprise. It wasn't long ago, of course, that it was unthinkable that Boris Johnson could lose the next election or the one after because he came in with a over 80 seat majority. Everybody knew that the only way that that could go badly would be, firstly, if Scotland sinks and the SNP disappear, and hey, they did, or something really bad happens to Boris Johnson, and it did. And of course, off he went. He had to walk the plank. So there are moments when you think, you know, well, that's a done deal. Everybody thought Johnson was going to be there for at least 2 terms. But of course, as we now know, things changed. Could things change again for Labour? I mean, is there anything in the data that is suggesting if Keir Starmer came knocking on your door, Patrick, tomorrow and said, just give me one scintilla of hope, is there anything for him?
Yes, I think there is. First of all, you're completely right to say that nothing is nailed on anymore in British politics. Nothing is forever, and we should expect the unexpected. So with that in mind, there are some signals underneath the data, I think, which are very important for Labour to pay attention to. And that is the fact that there is a much larger number of voters who do not want Nigel Farage and Reform to win the next election than do. And I think what Labour's mission is going to be, as they sort of articulated and began to spin toward at their conference, is it's going to be to try and unite voters who do not want to see a Reform government and do not want to see Farage and Number 10 behind that Labour cause. And there is enough that I am seeing in the underlying data to suggest that that is a pathway. Now, that is to make absolutely no guarantees that that pathway will be taken and it will be successful, but it is certainly an avenue open to them. And I think they know that. And if we go back just to the Caerphilly result again, I think we can almost see a sign of that playing out there. Plaid Cymru have won that seat with almost 50% of the vote. Yep. They went up very, very, very strongly. Reform, of course, put on a very good performance of their own. But if we compare that to the by-election poll, the sort of constituency poll, which was done by Salvation and Leader, of course, it comes with margins of error, and constituency polling is very difficult to do. But there's some suggestion, perhaps, that after that sort of poll came out and showed it was neck and neck, there was a push behind Plaid as the best placed party to defeat Reform by people people who did not want reform to win that seat. So if Labour and Keir Starmer can successfully take that model and replicate it at the next general election, that could be a way through for them. But it's a big ask.
It's a big ask. We will see. Patrick, thank you very much for your time. Patrick English is Director of Political Analytics at YouGov. Thank you to him. Let's talk to Sebastian Salek, Labour councillor for Waltham Forest, and Simon Danczuk, former Labour MP, now Reform UK member. I mean, Sebastian, firstly, you know, this is... in fact, we'll talk to Sebastian in just a second, and Simon, forgive me, we just got a very tiny little technical rewiring to do. Let me bring you some comments. Robin says, Labour and the Conservatives have burned their bridges with the electorate. They gaslight us all the time, fail all the time, and deliver broken promises. Reform needs a chance, says Rob. It's funny that Patrick English just said there's more people that don't want Nigel Farage than do want Nigel Farage. But then I suppose if you add up all the parties, if you add up all the Tories, all the Labour, all the Liberal Democrats and Greens, then obviously most of those voters don't want Nigel Farage. That isn't in itself the key or the barrier to success for Farage, unless Patrick's talking about just the floating voters. Simon Danczuk and Sebastian Salek join us, Labour councillor and former Labour MP, of course. Sebastian, firstly, this is your party. Took a bit of a kicking over there in Caerphilly. I know it's not a general election. It's not on everybody's radar, as I said at the beginning, but very significant.
I don't think it is that significant. It was kind of priced in. No one was seriously going into last night thinking that Labour was going to win this. It was a race between Plaid and Reform. I think Reform is the real story here. I think Patrick, your listener who you read out a message from a moment ago, makes a really good point. Reform, what are they, around 30% in the polls nationally, came in with 36% of the vote here, much higher than their polling nationally, and still that wasn't enough to win. So look, if I were from Reform today, I'd be really concerned that that national poll isn't going to translate necessarily into the ones they hope for.
But Sebastian, you said it's not significant. This is a seat that Labour have held for 100 years, and you've only been in power for half an hour. I mean, that's significant, right? That's not just a bruising, it's an annihilation.
It's completely normal for parties who are in government nationally to lose by-elections. It's just the normal course of politics. We see it, whoever is in government. So I'm not terribly surprised by the result this morning. I think we'll move on for it. It's not a mortal wound by any sense for the...
This is like Diane Abbott losing her seat, right, if it was a general election.
I don't think so. I think it's hard to make that comparison. They're completely two different places, London and Wales. So it's hard to make that equivalent.
All right, Simon Danczuk is with us. You're a former Labour MP. Simon, you would have once been campaigning for that party, but you saw the light, I suppose, in your words, and nipped over the fence to Reform UK. What do you make of what happened last night, and do you concur with Sebastian that it's no big deal?
It's a massive disaster for Labour, there's no doubt about that, down to 11% in that election yesterday. And, you know, this is the party of government, down to 11%. Labour have the best election machine in Britain and beyond in terms of getting their vote out, and all they could muster is 11% of the vote. I mean, it's devastating. And and it won't change, it won't get better for Labour unless they get rid of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and perhaps one or two others like Jess Phillips. And then it might only just get a little bit better. Nobody likes Labour. People are going out of their way to punish Labour because of what they've done to the country. To say the public are disappointed in them is an understatement.
Sebastian, you've got to get rid of Keir Starmer if you want success.
I don't think there are any signs that that's necessarily the case. I would argue the opposite, Simon. I think people are going out of the way to punish Reform, given that they got that many votes, but there are more people coming out. Remember, the turnout in this election was about 50%, super duper high, even for a by-election in Wales, especially for a by-election in Wales. People are coming out to say we do not want Reform, and in this case, it just happened that the anti-Reform vote was with Plaid Cymru.
Listen, if we are polling there on 36% and you're on 11%, I think it's quite clear. And other people, and people are voting 40-odd% for Plaid, then it's quite clear that people are turning out to avoid voting Labour. I mean, there's no argument about it. But listen, I'm not sticking up for Reform necessarily. They need to make some improvements. They need some sophisticated policies in place. They need to They need to campaign better than what they do. They need to be able to identify their supporters and get them out to vote. That's what Labour used to be good at, and Reform needs to get good at that. As Ian pointed out, it's a new party, but they have to get better at electioneering. And once they start doing that, we'll see some even better results than what we saw yesterday.
Sebastian, do you sense, though, that people's appetites have changed? We keep discussing this and dissecting it almost on a daily basis on the programme, that appetites have changed, what people are looking for. The Green Party are showing improvements. I know, we can argue that Zach Polanski seems a little bit mad, some people might say. He wants to make selling heroin legal, but renting out your house illegal. Stuff like that. It's a bit weird, but hey, he's doing the kind of populism thing, but on the other side of the fence. Appetites have changed in this respect, Sebastian. People are looking for different things. The status quo has been smashed to bits.
You're right in a sense. I think that people are hurting. They've been hurting since 2008. Every year that goes by, it gets worse. We haven't really recovered from the financial crisis. And so people take risks. And I think every weird thing we've seen happen in politics, whether it's Brexit or Corbyn or Reform or what else, is people rolling the dice, just trying something new. And that seems to be what's playing out now with Plaid. Is it necessarily going to make things better? I'm not convinced. I haven't seen the answers anywhere else. That's why I remain, and for a long time will be, a Labour man. I think we've got the answers. But I can understand why people might be wanting to try something new in the vague hope that it will improve things.
Do you think, Simon Danczuk, that whilst this was an incredibly impressive result for Reform, and for any party that only has 5 MPs, has only been going that long. I know there's a very high-profile leader. And it's incredible work, but as our YouGov guest said, it's not quite enough. It looks good, but actually the manifestation of that is still that you're probably not going to win.
Oh, no, I think Reform are capable of winning, but they have to be smarter in their approach. They have to establish themselves better. There's no doubt about that. I think you're right. The status quo is broken. Labour are being squeezed by Corbyn's party, by the nationalist parties in Wales and in Scotland, and even by the Liberal Democrats. They've got a real problem in terms of the next general election. Their only hope is if they get rid of Starmer. And I would put money on him not being in place within 12 months. And then they might do just a little bit better. But Reform are in it to win it, and they have a good chance of doing that.
I mean, this idea that Keir Starmer can't survive this, Sebastian, look, I know Prime Ministers go through turbulent times, and people like me in newspapers like to talk about the drama of the piece. But if this were translated, let's say next May, at the local elections and the Senedd elections, then this would be more than just a bit inconvenient for the Prime Minister if Plaid Cymru or Reform took over Wales. I mean, that's more than a bit of a kicking, isn't it? That's annihilation.
Yeah, it depends what happens next May. I think it will be a real test for the government. That's just a fact. I'm concerned, though, that we are seeing this vote not really playing out necessarily across the country. I just think there's a very big anti-Farage consensus, and it's people who are Greens, who are Lib Dems, who are soft Tories maybe, and they're not going to like it, but at the end of the day, they're probably going to file in behind Labour to get rid of Farage and to stop him, rather than allowing him to come in. We have this narrative about this unstoppable force from Reform, which up until today felt true, and I think this really shatters the narrative in Caerphilly. Farage a couple of weeks ago was saying, we're throwing everything at this, and look, it wasn't enough. So there are some limits to what Farage can achieve. And I'm pleased to see it, I think, because I don't think he's a positive force for this country. He's not a positive force, Simon Danczuk. Why would you disagree with that, other than the fact that you're a Reform UK member?
Well, yes, but Nigel is very popular in actual fact. There are more people supporting Reform now than there are supporting Labour or the Conservatives. He's exceptionally popular. We have in Keir Starmer the most unpopular Prime Minister since records began, since opinion polling started. This is the most unpopular Prime Minister, and there's a good reason for that. He's incompetent, he's not capable. People have seen in just less than 18 months how bad he is at being Prime Minister. And if there were a general election tomorrow, they would kick him out in double quick time. And that's what people are calling for. And you can't blame him. With the state of the economy, with how he's handled a whole range of issues from Chargus through to the spying by China and everything else, he's a disaster.
Sebastian, final response on that?
You spin a good yarn, Simon, but I'm afraid the numbers don't stack up. I saw some YouGov polling that pitched Starmer against Farage. Starmer, 45% of the voters said they would go for him, just 33% for Farage. If you strip away the names and you just go with the two parties, Labour and Reform, you get similar numbers. So the problem with Farage is he's just not seen as Prime Minister material, and I think ultimately that's going to hold him back.
We will see. Simon, Sebastian, guys, thank you very much indeed. Simon Danczuk, former Labour MP, now a Reform UK member, and the other voice you heard there, Sebastian Saylor, Labour councillor over there at Waltham Forest. Thank you to both of them. I think the one thing that, to me, the standout bit of this, as someone who's kind of covered and commentated on all of this lark for years, is the fact we're debating Labour versus Reform and not Labour versus the Tories, who are, by the way, let me remind you, the official opposition in this country. That's not an insignificant role. They might not have won, but the official opposition carry some clout, and they are the party that's meant to put the country, or the priorities of the country, to the governing party. That's their job, and yet they've kind of been, I mean, to say sideline doesn't even cover it. When you look at what happened in, I know it's Caerphilly, and, you know, the Conservatives were never going to do particularly well there, but they got 2% of the vote. Poor old Gareth Potter, who was, I wonder what Gareth is doing today. He was their candidate over there. Maybe Gareth has met up with another Gareth, Gareth Hughes, who was the Green candidate over there in Caerphilly. He got 1.5%. And maybe they've met up with Stevie, who was the Lib Dem candidate, because he got 1.5% as well. Collectively, they're the 5% club. So maybe they've all gone out on the lash today. I bet you those three, Gareth, the two Gareths and Stevie Boy, are probably off their face right now, somewhere in a bar in Cardiff.